USPAP, page 262, Appraisal Development and Scope of Work Issues Continued. Number 173, Checking Stable versus Declining Property Values. Question: when performing residential appraisal assignments, I use standard pre-printed appraisal software forms. The forms ask me to identify whether neighborhood property values are increasing, stable, or declining. I have been told that lenders won't accept appraisal reports where declining is checked, even when this is an accurate analysis. So I usually check stable to accommodate the underwriting process. Is this a violation of USPAP? Response: yes. If the appraiser is aware that a market is declining and either intentionally or due to gross negligence reports it as being otherwise, he or she is in violation of the ethics rule. If an appraisal report indicates that property values are stable when they are actually declining, and the appraiser's data supports the conclusion of declining values, the report is misleading and in violation of Standards Rule 2-1A. In addition, if the appraiser does not properly recognize that a market is declining, he or she may also be in violation of other requirements in Standard 1, as well as the competency rule. Number 174, range of value. Question: is a range of value considered an appraisal? Response: yes. The comment to the definition of appraisal states, an appraisal must be numerically expressed as a specific amount, as a range of numbers, or as a relationship. For instance, not more than, not less than, to a previous value opinion, or numerical benchmark. For instance, assessed value, collateral value. Number 175, more than one intended use. Question: can an appraisal or appraisal review assignment include more than one intended use? Response: yes. USPAP requires appraisers to identify the intended use of the appraiser's opinions and conclusions. There is no prohibition against having more than one intended use. However, when performing an appraisal or appraisal review assignment with multiple intended uses, the appraiser must be very careful to clearly identify each of the intended uses in the report to limit the possibility of confusion. Additionally, the appraiser must comply with all assignment conditions that are applicable to the intended uses. The appraiser must also recognize that the scope of work may need to be expanded in order to provide credible results for all of the intended uses. Number 176. Value in use request from federally regulated lender. Question. My client, federally insured financial institution, has asked me to provide a value in use appraisal instead of a market value appraisal. May I do this? Response. USPAP does not dictate the use of any specific type or definition of value. The type and definition of value must be appropriate for the intended use and intended users. For federally related transactions, federally insured financial institutions require an opinion of market value as defined by regulations. Therefore, if you provide a value in use, you may also have to provide a market value, depending on the intended use. Page 263, number 177. Drive-by and desktop appraisals. Question. Does USPAP permit real property appraisers to perform drive-by or desktop appraisal assignments? Response. The comment to Standards Rule 1-2E states, in part, an appraiser may use any combination of a property inspection and documents to identify the relevant characteristics of the subject property. This is also discussed in Advisory Opinion Number 2, Inspection of the Subject Property. It states, an inspection is not required by USPAP, but one is often conducted. The extent of the inspection process is an aspect of the scope of work and may vary based on assignment conditions and the intended use of the assignment results. It is the appraiser's responsibility to determine the appropriate scope of work, including the degree of inspection necessary to produce credible assignment results, given the intended use. For further clarification, see Advisory Opinion Number 2. Number 178, Inspection of Subject Property. Question. Have I violated USPAP if I don't inspect the interior of the subject property? Response. USPAP has no requirement to inspect a subject property's interior. Standards Rule 1-1B requires that an appraiser not commit a substantial error of omission or commission that significantly affects an appraisal. The comment to that standards rule states in part, diligence is required to identify and analyze the factors, conditions, data, and any other information that would have a significant effect on the credibility of the assignment results. Standards Rule 1-2E, Roman numeral 1, requires that an appraiser identify a subject property's physical characteristics and its legal and economic attributes. But note that the required identification must be relevant to the type and definition of value and intended use of the appraisal. If an interior inspection is not relevant, it is not required. Determining whether an interior inspection is relevant is a scope of work decision. The scope of work rule states, an appraiser must not allow assignment conditions to limit the scope of work to such a degree that the assignment results are not credible in the context of the intended use. Advisory opinion number 2. Inspection of the subject property advises that if adequate information about the relevant characteristics of the subject property, such as information that could only be obtained as a result of an interior inspection, is not possible by personal inspection or from sources the appraiser believes to be are reliable, an appraiser must withdraw from the assignment unless the appraiser can modify the assignment conditions to expand the scope of work to include gathering the necessary information or use an extraordinary assumption about such information if credible assignment results can still be developed. Additional guidance about inspecting properties can be found in Advisory Opinion number 23, identifying the relevant characteristics of the subject property of a real property appraisal assignment, and Advisory Opinion number 28, Scope of Work Decision, Performance and Disclosure. End of page.